So good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. We have a lot lined up for you today, so let's get started with the day's highlights. With President Park Geun-hye set to enter her fourth year in office, we look at how she has done in terms of boosting the domestic economy. Out from the king of sales at 24-hour marts is alcoholic drinks, and in are fresh lunchbox meals, which have been driving up performance and keeping customers happy. Job creation. It's not just the number of new jobs, but the quality of work that the Korean government has set out to improve through reforms, one of the greatest challenges it faces. Chairing an economic consultation meeting on Wednesday, President Park Geun-hye once again called on lawmakers to pass a package of labor reform bills, saying all four must be passed together to have the desired effect. President Park listed work-life balance as a key goal of her labor reforms and said working moms struggling to achieve that should receive support from employment zones set up at the nation's chain of innovation centers. Stressing the role of institutions in education reform, she also suggested universities come up with their own plans to better foster students so they can meet the demands of prospective employers and more easily land jobs. So President Park Geun-hye enters her fourth year in office tomorrow, and in time for that, we take a look at her government's main economic achievements so far and the challenges ahead with Arirang News Hwang Ji-hye joining us in the studio. Hey, Ji-hye.
Hi, Ji-yoon.
All right, so could you walk us through some of the main achievements that we've seen so far since she took office?
Well, experts say the Park administration has done well in keeping the recovery momentum alive through aggressive set of stimulus measures that also included an extra budget worth around $10 billion. The Korean economy last year posted the third fastest growth rate among some of the world's largest economies, specifically those with populations of over 20 million and per capita national incomes that exceed $20,000. Now, this expansion came despite slowing global demand that dragged down the country's traditional growth engine, exports. Another area that the current administration managed to do well in is maintaining fiscal soundness while introducing the expansionary policies which allowed the government to post its first budget surplus last year for the first time in 4 years. And thanks to the country's fiscal health, Korea late last year received the third highest ranking of AA2 by Moody's Investor Service for the first time. Shifting gears to the realm of structural reforms, where a lot of attention is focused on these days, the government also produced some positive results, getting through revisions on the civil servants' pension system.
All right, although the public pension reform is considered a big step forward in the public sector, there's still much to go on the reforms in the overall structural reforms, right?
You're right. It's true that more has to be done to complete the structural reforms in the four major sectors, and that are education, labor, finance, and the public sector. And to do so, winning over cooperation from the National Assembly is critical as a number of reform bills are being held up at the parliament amid a protracted political standoff between rival parties. Now, we have to look at the reason why pushing through the reforms is so important for the economy, and it's because it's directly related to raising the country's growth potential. Experts say in the long term, these issues are more critical than simply boosting the recovery momentum to meet the government's growth targets.
These days, low growth is becoming a global trend. The Chinese economy, which Korea has benefited from, is also slowing, and the rising competitive edge of Chinese companies is eroding our competitiveness. So instead of being overly focused on growth figures, we need to find new engines for stable economic expansion.
In fact, today, Korea's top central banker, Lee Jae-yong, once again emphasized the importance of structural reforms in raising the country's growth potential and achieving sustainable growth. He said Korea's productivity is too low compared to other advanced economies like the United States, and that it is a big problem since it's one of the factors combined with the capital and labor that determine the growth potential of a country.
Now, Jia, these reforms are not only the issues that the Park administration faces, with snowballing household debt time after time becoming a potential threat to the domestic economy.
Right, and we do have new figures regarding the household debt. The Bank of Korea says the debt, which includes sales on credit, hit a record high of 1,200 trillion won, and that is around $1 trillion as of the end of last year. This is the largest amount logged since 2002 when related data were first compiled. It's also up roughly $100 billion from a year ago, marking the fastest pace of growth on record. The rise was led by the growth of household loans, including mortgages, on the back of an upbeat real estate market. The growth of sales on credit that shot up in the third quarter last year, on the other hand, due to measures to jumpstart spending, leading to high credit card bills this time, actually slowed down slightly. Now, this debt problem is cited as a potential risk by many economists, with growing fears about the property market losing steam in the next 2 to 3 years. But they also add that it's already a burden to the economy as it's stacked up with longer-term issues like the aging population.
People are choosing to save instead of spend, facing uncertain economic conditions. And they also want to prepare for post-retirement. This kind of tendency won't change easily.
The rise in household debt in the fourth quarter actually also has to do with government measures to clamp down on debt. Ahead of tighter guidelines when screening applicants for loans that kicked in this month, more people who were looking to borrow turned to banks before those rules kick in. So now, with policymakers unleashing fresh efforts to tackle swelling debt levels, we'll have to keep an eye on whether those numbers start showing some changes in the first quarter of this year.
And the government is also working on dealing with debt risks stemming from the corporate sector. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, and that's another major challenge lying ahead, of course, ahead of the Park administration. Experts say corporate restructuring should take place as planned by the government, and they say that while concerns about job loss and its effects on growth should be noted, further delay, as seen in previous administrations, could turn the problem into an even bigger crisis.
Definitely a lot of challenges ahead as she has 2 years, right, left in office.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
The financial losses of South Korean companies from the shutdown of the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex is set to stand at an estimated $661 million. This is according to the Emergency Planning Committee of the companies from the park, which calculated losses of 120 firms out of the 124 they used to operate out of Kaesong. And the committee says the damages include $460 million in investment assets and $199 million in inventory. But potential losses that may stem from client complaints have not yet been factored in. And South Korean companies have urged the government to roll out more comprehensive compensation measures, saying the payouts offered by the government's Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund would cover a much smaller portion of their losses. Tech startups with their smart new products are under the spotlight at this year's Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. And our Kim Ji-yeon shares with us some of those cool gadgets.
This year's Mobile World Congress is not only an invitation for global tech giants to step up, but it's also a great business opportunities for startups and their creative inventions. Korean startup Dot has unveiled the world's first Braille smartwatch for the visually impaired. The face of the device is covered in 30 Braille dots. They can be used to help the user type and send messages. A special module set meant the watch could be shrunk to a wearable size. It also ensured the device could come with an affordable price tag of $300. Dot says it plans to sell its products starting next year in G20 countries and hopes to develop the world's first Braille pad in the near future.
We worked with a lot of visually impaired people to maximize their sense of touch using Braille. In the process, we learned that one of their biggest worries was that they could break it easily since they're not used to handling sophisticated devices on their own. So we addressed their concerns by fitting the device with the strongest aluminum material we could find.
This smartphone case by Korean startup 24/7 is equipped with a stun gun for emergency protection. With the flip of a switch located on the back of the phone, the case can emit up to 100,000 volts of electricity and notify police in under 2 seconds. 24/7 says the device is easy and safe to use.
This one's really safe because unless you put your finger in it, safety finger, it's not going to be activated. And we also have the safety button. You're going to have to push it up to activate it. So actually you're going to have to put your fingertip, and then after that you're going to have to push it up to activate stun gun. So it's pretty safe when you're on the phone.
24/7 thinks participating in the MWC will help them realize their goal of finding a business partner so it can launch products in other countries, in particular in the US and Europe. The startup says it wants to launch its app called Vault around May and the phone case sometime during the second half of this year. Kim Jian, Business Daily, Barcelona.
It's a sad fact that in Korea, many elderly people are forced to lead overly modest lifestyles, with many struggling to make ends meet in their advanced age. The elderly poverty rate is higher here than anywhere else in the OECD, and in many cases, they don't even have their own property to fall back on. Our Park Geun-hye has the details.
The latest data paints an even gloomier picture for Korea's growing ranks of elderly, not only in terms of income, but also the level of poverty based on assets. The Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs on Wednesday released a survey of seniors' assets and income based on the National Livelihood Factual Survey compiled in 2011. It found the net property of a single elderly person under 75 years of age was 45.0 on an average scale of 100 for all age groups. This was even worse for those over 75 and living alone, coming in at a lowly 33.8. But the figure for elderly couples was higher than the average at 129.7. Some in the political realm claim seniors hold a lot of real estate compared to other age groups, and that the elderly poverty rate doesn't accurately reflect the reality. But it turns out their income and property ownership are both pretty dismal. The rate of the so-called income-poor, property-rich seniors was 14% for single seniors under 75 and 10.5% for those over 75. Income-poor, property-rich refers to those in the bottom 40% in terms of income and the top 40% in property. The Institute attributes the low level of assets to the transfer of property to their grown-up children in their later years. The latest report is in contrast to last year's statistics submitted to the Parliamentary Inspection of Government Affairs, which only focused on income. Park Geun-hye, Business Daily.
Last week, we told you about the strong sales growth that convenience stores registered last year, a rare bright spot amid a lagging domestic retail environment. And interestingly, data show that the driver of the growth was not the traditional mainstays of alcoholic beverages. Our Eunice Kim takes a look.
It's lunch hour, and office workers trickle in one by one to survey the fast eat options. Convenience store lunchboxes have transformed over recent years, from a low-quality offering to hold over hunger to a full, hearty meal.
It's a healthier alternative to instant cup noodles. I have it when I want to save on eating out.
Side dishes are generous and well thought out, comparable to those sold by specialty stores. Marketed with famous faces, consumers, most of them in their 20s and 30s, are snatching them up.
With celebrities like actress Hedy and food personality Park Geun-hye backing the box sets, the quality has improved.
Company data show that sales of such convenience store lunchboxes have been explosive. Korea's largest convenience store brand CU is seeing lunchbox meal sales so far this year nearly triple compared to the same period last year, while 7-Eleven did in fact more than triple. Such sales have propelled the box sets to become the #1 seller at 24-hour marts, bypassing beer, soju, and banana milk, items that had consistently clinched the honor for 27 years since convenience stores entered the Korean market. It's also a reflection of a booming one-person household market amid a tepid economy. Consumers who live alone are seeking cheaper options that still provide the comfort of a home-cooked meal. And it's this market that retailers are hoping to secure. 24-hour mart brands carry dedicated lunchbox development teams and even hire on so-called rice sommeliers to capture the taste buds and loyalty of the shopper living alone. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And that brings us to the end. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.